This week's going to be a big week because beginning on Wednesday, you're going to have testimony and finally find out the identification and see the whistleblowers being questioned in person, live on television. You choose to watch it. I'm sure we'll cover it here. And we'll finally get to the bottom of one of the worst terror attacks that we have suffered. And certainly when you lose an ambassador, 3 other great Americans, it should be investigated, although some are miffed that we continue to cover it. But they shouldn't be now, because now politics is out and whistleblowers are in.
So it was paramount to this president that the talking points that his campaign was giving out in the time still remain the same, which was Al-Qaeda is on the run. Remember, that was central to every single stump speech.
Significant. Honestly, I'd have to say, for the good of the country, I hope it is a cover-up rather than the alternative, which is that the Obama administration was so blind to the reality of Islamic terrorism, the continued threat from Al-Qaeda in Libya and elsewhere around the world, that it just couldn't deal with it. If that's the problem, there's no cure for it. If it was merely a political cover-up, then there can be a political cost to pay.
I think it's obvious that this was a political decision made by politicians. That's what they do. They had an election coming up. They buried this thing. I get the White House cover-up.
Cover-up. Deadly attack on the consulate in Benghazi. It's going to be obviously the lead story tomorrow in D.C. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, they're going to hold a hearing on the matter tomorrow. Stage is set here for a lot of fierce partisan fighting. And Andrew, more than just the same meme we heard through all the campaign, they say this time it's different, this time there's a smoking gun. Oh, what are they hanging their hat on?
Well, again, the smoking gun that they think points to a cover-up by the Obama administration. And on Wednesday, a top State Department official will offer testimony challenging the administration's account of what happened. The #2 U.S. official in Libya, who's set to testify before Congress this week, says he knew immediately that the September 11th assault was no protest. According to interview transcripts, Gregory Hicks, a 22-year State Department veteran, said, quote, "I thought it was a terrorist attack from the get-go. I think everybody in the mission thought it was a terrorist attack from the beginning." Now, some Republicans argue that it was a cover-up and an attempt to save face less than 2 months before the election.
Clearly, there was a political decision to say something different than what was reasonable to say.
Okay. Here's what I'm not getting, and maybe you guys can tell me at the table. Say that they got it wrong, and after the fact they said that instead of a protest gone wrong, that it in fact was a terror attack, and it took a Sunday show misstatement, whatever you want to say. No one's alleging, are they, that 4 Americans would still be alive today if the administration did something different.
Certainly
where's the
they
cover-up?
No, certainly. Let's make this very clear. We had troops in Tripoli. They could have gone in and defended our embassy in Benghazi.
Nonsense.
It's a fact. According to Hicks,
it's a fact according to this one guy?
A 20-year veteran of our Foreign Service Corps.
That's a Fox fact.
No, the source that Andrew quoted is a 20-year veteran of the Foreign Service Corps.
Relax. You're jumping on this.
Me relax? You're the one reaching across the table, Richard.
Now I know why this table is as wide as it is. The truth should be come out. This guy should be listened to. But your willingness to assume that the guy who agrees with your preconception is the possessor of the truth.
I've already read his transcript. What he gave
and
the
he may be
before.
right, and he may be wrong. Read the transcript. Read the other transcripts.
But the answer is we could not fly our troops from Tripoli to Benghazi, according to what he said, because of the fact the White House couldn't get that approved.
To be fair,
That's the question.
Leon Panetta, the defense secretary at the time, said that the troops couldn't have gotten there in time. Even if you scrambled the jets and everything else, it wouldn't have been, they couldn't have got there in time. We're going to hear more of this tomorrow, but Andrew, you know, I even heard, what was it, Huckabee, who said that this will lead to an impeachment for the president here if he can't run out the clock before he gets out of office. Is this more about people who've been dying to hang a scandal on this president for a term and almost a half now, finally getting something? Or is this story not going away because no one ever got to the bottom of what happened before the attack and after the attack?
Look, I think there are still some unanswered questions about what happened, and certainly that bears investigation. But I think we got some insight on that from the first soundbite that we heard in that clip of the Fox montage that we played. One of the worst terrorist attacks in our history. No, it's not. No, it's not. How many people died on 9/11? How many people died in the Cole bombing? How many people have died from terrorist activities all over the country or all over the world? And these things happen. Americans are targeted, especially Americans in foreign service. It happens. I think it's becoming a little bit of a fetish from the right, especially because they couldn't hang it on the president before the election.
It happens. It's not a good enough answer to why we can't defend our Americans abroad.
So give me the system that protects every American everywhere around the world.
Well, first off, we have to protect our embassies, okay? And when they don't have the proper protection at an embassy, should we be occupying or not? That's the first question.
Who cut funding for protecting embassies?
But at no point the administration say
Who cut funding?
At some point, the administration has to say we cannot occupy this embassy if we do not have enough
funding for the embassy?
So let's
That's
just get
not
that
it's
straight.
specific. It's a specific
Who
coverage
cut the funding?
of. You want to sit here and go through budget line items, you can go through it,
I'll
Richard.
tell you who cut
the
the
point
funding.
is the
Republican
president
members
has
of Congress.
the job.
If there was a problem,
when he takes the
everyone
oath
shares
to
the
protect
blame.
our Americans.
Everybody
And he didn't do it. But let's remember this too. You asked Andrew the question about, is this about going after a president they couldn't go after the past 5 years at this point? It's about 2016 too. Who was the Secretary of State at the time? What is she right now in the polls?
And that brings me, Dominic, to my next question here. How much, there's two Democrats here, obviously, with some exposure to this, fairly or not, but politically I'm talking about. President, he's still got a second-term agenda here, and as we all know, lame duck comes early and earlier the way our political cycles work. And you got a Secretary of State who is the most popular Democrat, even including this president, and she's going to have to be answering questions about this, if she does run as we expect in 2016. So how much will this still be an issue 6 months from now for this president and 3 years from now when we've got another presidential election?
Well, right now, Republicans don't have anything to hang their hat on in terms of Hillary Clinton in 2016. So they're looking for something. As a matter of fact, they're desperately scrambling for something to throw at her. Right now, they have nothing. All they can do right now is hand her the keys to the White House. And with that said, though, there are some legitimate questions about Benghazi. So they will continue for this president. I don't know how much is legit. I don't know how much is just pure politics, but there are some legitimate questions.
But from a political standpoint, I think the GOP has weakened the value of this as a political attack because they become the boys who've cried Benghazi, and they've been doing it since day one, where it's first, they didn't call it a terrorist attack, and it should have been a terrorist attack.
I think this story is the fog of war kind of one. It's going to be a hard thing to get black and white answers.
I ran investigations of administrations for a long time, and they were successful. The key part of that was not overselling the rhetoric of what you were looking at, letting the facts speak for themselves. Fortunately for the Democrats, the Republicans have people like Darrell Issa and you out there making cases that the evidence cannot yet sustain. The evidence drives these things. Dominic's correct.
What charge did I make, Richard? What charge did I make that wasn't factually correct right now?
Could have gotten there.
I'm reading that from the transcript that we had from Hicks, who's
I have a list in my
ambassador.
hand of 27 communists. Come on.
How are you going to red scare
I'm going
Give me a
off a
break.
20-year foreign service
And he could be
diplomat.
right and he could be wrong.
He was the deputy to the ambassador who was killed.
And Leon Panetta says he's wrong.
Right. I mean, we just got to be careful because I think we all know 100% fact that this was not a demonstration gone bad. We know that this was a terror attack. But what I want to know is what happened before and during the attacks that could or couldn't have been done differently. If there's a smoking gun, I got a feeling it's going to come up
Was there
tomorrow.
any piece of paper that came from our secretary at this point that says, Secretary of State saying, we need more protection at an embassy, that we have a threat?
Let the facts come out. You could luck into something. You continue this way, you're going to get
When
nothing.
we come back, we're going to talk about the other big issue in addition to guns and what happens tomorrow that we will be hearing quite a bit about in the next few weeks. I'm talking about immigration reform here. The effort to bring illegal immigrants out of the shadows, good or bad for the economy. We got two competing sets of numbers, and we heard after the election both parties wanted to do this. The question is, do we think it's going to happen? Stay with us.